Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this next program in the Balancing the Christian Life Conference. And what a delight to introduce you to my dear friend, Minerva Holk. Minerva earned her associate degree at Florida College, then her bachelor degree in a nursing program at Murray State University. Her first job was as a labor and delivery nurse in a regional high-risk center in Dayton, Ohio, excuse me. Minerva returned to school to earn her Master in Science in Nursing at the Indiana University and married George, a USN pilot. And together they raised two sons. And so Minerva was a stay-at-home mom for about 11 years and was actively involved in teaching children's Bible classes. And upon her husband's retirement, she returned to work and then in 2016 graduated from the University of Washington, earning a Doctor of Education, majoring in education leadership with an emphasis in nursing education. Following spring, Minerva's life, though, was rocked by the unexpected death of her husband. And we've discussed how together within our friendship, how God has used every stage of Minerva's remarkable life to prepare her for the next stage. And in 2020, Minerva accepted the opportunity to head up the nursing program at Florida College in Temple Terrace, Florida, where she was instrumental in getting that nursing program accredited. So it's a position that she just recently retired from to do more of what she loves: travel, bike, serve in the kingdom of God, read, quilt, and cook, a whole lot more. And so she is a woman who has accomplished much, and I'm honored to welcome Minerva to this Balancing the Christian Life Conference. Thank you, Minerva, for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Cindy. Thank you for your remarks. I appreciate it.
All right, you betcha. So what do you have for us today on this topic of the beauty of trusting God, a case study of Deborah?
Okay. Well, Deborah is the only female judge in all of the Bible. And her name means bee. And every time I see that, I think of busy bee, because they're always working and, making preparations for, doing what needs to be done to be ready for the next thing. I also am going to go through the names of the other key characters because I like names. And Barak is his name means lightning, and he is the general, the military man. And then Jael, who becomes our heroine, her name's Mountain Goat. And I think of mountain goats, and I've seen them in some of my travels, and they, are very adept at standing in precarious positions on the side of a mountain, which is going to serve her well later in the account. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hoping that as we talk about Deborah and the situation that presented itself to her and the outcome of that it helps strengthen our faith that God can use us, take our strengths, our weaknesses, and turn them into strengths, and that we will have the faith to know that God will accomplish what his purpose is. Yeah. Whether or not we are willing and we are able, or he wouldn't ask us.
True.
So whether or not we're able to see that is the harder part. Many times we see examples of God calling ordinary people to do extraordinary things, and those things are always accomplished, and they're accomplished because of God being true to his word and their faith that he will deliver. We know that Deborah was the wife of Lapidoth. She was a judge. A judge is a person who, makes legal rulings, settles disputes. And she was also a prophetess. And there were other women who served as prophetesses, but she was the only one who was also a judge. Mm-hmm. There's no mention of her having children of her own, but she is, after this battle is won, there's a song of Deborah, and in that she is called out as the mother of Israel.
Yeah, I love that because
And
it really notes the feminine. It's a femininity that she
yeah,
retains, even though she's somewhat of, at least she's by the side of the general.
right.
I don't know if we can call her a warrior princess or not, but whatever it is.
Well, I think it depends on what age group we would be having this lesson with, because there's some that might be a good thing.
Yes, and I just love that Mother of Israel is still feminine. Like you can really be more than a conqueror and retain that femininity. So I love that.
Hmm. And mothers have so many responsibilities of, looking out for the welfare of their families, their unique children, all of that. Anyway, back to Deborah and being a judge. Most she was she was involved in this battle that happened. The Israelites were fairly notorious for disobeying God. God
Yes.
would tell them, what his will was, as he always does, and they would choose to follow a different path, and then they would be oppressed or punished or in captivity, and they would
Kind of cry out.
eventually cry out to God and
Mhm.
say, have mercy on us. We're sorry. We won't do it again. Please deliver us.
Yeah.
And in this situation, they had been oppressed by the Canaanites for 20 years.
Okay.
Because of their sins, God had turned them over to Jabin, the king of Canaan. And then God spoke to Deborah and said, I want you to call out Barak and have him come and
Mhm.
lead the army, and I'm going to deliver my people. So this is what's going to happen. And Deborah never doubted that was what was going to happen. I do think she was probably she was confident that God would fulfill his word, fulfill his
Yes.
will, and that he would, and that she would be able to do what she needed to do because God knew her well enough to know that she had the abilities to carry that forward.
Yes. And I wonder if it's because of all that, is this why Barak asks her to come along? Like, is that the reason? Does he sense that her trust in the Lord, there's so much power in that. There's so much power in a woman who trusts the Lord and that rapport that she has with God. So I'm not sure if that plays into um, why he asks her to come along for the battle.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we also don't know that Barak was necessarily there were some Israelites who were in captivity, not because they had sinned. It wasn't there. I don't know. Deborah is obviously faithful to God, and she's in captivity with the rest of them.
Yeah, right.
And I'm wondering if Barak might have also been that as
Mm,
another reason for why he was the one who was chosen,
yeah.
aside from his military experience. Didn't think about that until,
Mhm.
recently. I think the interesting thing about God's word is that it can seem so simple
Mhm.
and yet so complex the more you think about it. And then we have to be careful that we are being prayerful in our interpretation of it and not,
Yeah,
putting our own spin on things.
exactly. Exactly. And I'm always looking, without putting my own spin on it, always looking like what can I'm looking for things to learn from this. And so far in our story, I'm learning that, when she's sitting under that palm and
Mm-hmm.
judging for Israel, the palm tree, and people are coming to her, she's giving God's answers. She is telling them the wisdom of God that really is where the solutions to all our dilemmas are.
Mm-hmm.
And And so that's inspiring to me. Like, okay, if anyone comes to me and says, okay, here's this complex situation, I've tried A, B, and C, what does God say on this? That I would look to God's answers. So that's, I mean, that's one thing I think that we've learned so far when it comes to this remarkable woman, Deborah, Judge Deborah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And she's the only woman who was ever asked to go into battle alongside a man.
Yeah, very interesting.
And I was talking to one of my friends about this, and she said, I wonder what her husband thought about that.
Oh, I never even thought about him. Yeah.
I know. Well, I've also wondered about JL's husband when he got home that day too. But you know,
yeah.
those we aren't told. I'm sure he probably, I have a feeling he wasn't terribly surprised. You know, he probably knew her well enough that this would be like, oh, okay. You know, see
Yeah.
when you get back.
Yeah. There's a t-shirt that says something like, keep calm and let JL handle it, kind of thing. You know, like she's a woman that can, whatever needs to be done, she's going to get it done.
She's going to get it done. And so I don't know what it was about Deborah that he wanted her to go with him. We aren't told.
Yes.
I think it was her faith and her courage, her confidence that, you know, this is going to happen. God is going to do that. And she was going to follow what God had told her. And so she went with him into the battle.
Yeah. And they're already told how it's going to go, right? They're already told.
Yeah, they're already told how it's going to go. And when she actually called him up to talk to her, he said that he would only go if she went alongside him. And that was interesting to me because maybe he was having a not as strong in his faith at that moment as it needed to be. That he, you know, sometimes when we're feeling weak, if you're with somebody who is exhibiting strong faith, they can help you have the courage you need to do what you need to do.
Yes. And one thing I learned when we from you on this story that I hadn't put it together yet is that he is, even though he needs her, he feels he needs her with him in order to accomplish what he's been told here. And let me get that. What the scripture says here is Judges 4:6-7. Has not the Lord God of Israel commanded, go and deploy troops to Mount Tabor, take with you 10,000 men of the sons of Naphtali and of the sons of Zebulun, and against you I will deploy Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude at the river Kishon, and I will deliver him into your hand, unquote. So, I mean, God there is like, you've got this. This is like very much that the battle belongs to the Lord kind of thing. And they're going to be more than conquerors. But no, I think you're right. He senses her deep faith and connection with God. And yeah, I'm not sure if he's feeling uncertain or if he's just being humble. It's hard to say. It's just hard to say what his motivation is there. But
one thing that
you pointed
though is Deborah did point out to him the custom of their time, that the fact that you have asked a woman to accompany you is going to discredit you as far as being the victor in this. You are not, you will win the army, but the battle belongs to the woman. So, and even knowing, so whatever reason it was he had for asking, it was a significant reason in his own mind.
Yes.
Because for most men, they would have, that would have dissuaded them. They would have said, no, thank you. I got this. I'll, even if they shouldn't sometimes say that, that they would.
Yes. And I did learn from you from your notes too, that in Hebrews 11, he is still given the credit for being a hero in this situation. And so we kind of talked about like everybody in Hebrews, it's not like they always did everything that they were supposed to do. So we don't, Minerva and I, neither one feel comfortable taking a wild guess, but yeah, you kind of wonder. You wonder, is he a little bit fearful, or is he being humble in this case, and making himself secondary? I don't know.
Well, and maybe he just wants the person who actually talked to God about it, or got the direct message from God with alongside.
Yes.
But for whatever reason, Deborah was direct and made sure that he understood what he was getting himself in for and what the consequences of what that would be. And the consequences were, it wasn't like just this battle and everybody will forget about it. This became a song, a poem, a narrative that was told for generations after that. And every time that they mention it, Deborah is mentioned first. Barak is second. He's second in the song. And Jael is given the credit for the murder and, the killing of Sisera.
Yes.
And that's immortalized for forever.
Yeah. And it's so rare. It is a rare thing that a woman would be a judge, as you made. That was one of your first points. And that a woman would be related to the conquering of such a mighty defeat. I mean, it's as thorough as God said that it would be. And I was wondering if this might be an application for us, because when you think about, God, when God created, even from the beginning of Genesis, that God's role for man, if we look in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 11, Ephesians 5, 21 and 23, that men are to lead and protect their families and their nations and, everything that is under their authority and under their watch care, and women are to champion them and support them and give wise counsel, Ephesians 5, 22 through 25. And Proverbs 31:26 says she opens her mouth in wisdom. So I think that's the wise counsel there, and together they kind of conquer whatever they need to conquer through life together, and they kind of share that victory.
Yeah, but I think that together is really important. That the man is also obligated to not only listen, but to actually hear what his wife is trying to communicate to him.
Oh, yeah. And most men will tell you that his wife is his best asset when it comes to a sounding board. And really, Mark talks about, he heard this phrase, she's your beneficial adversary. Right. So
that's cute.
Like, are you, it's beneficial. I'm for you. I'm in favor of you. But have you thought about X, Y, Z? And so I think, men that have the character Christ, that men that are pursuing godliness, they're humble enough to be like, right. I like your idea. I'm going to mash it up with my idea and, and just kind of find the best way, no matter whose idea it was. But this Deborah being the judge in Israel, I was thinking about how in Isaiah 3, 11 through 13, it talks about woe to the wicked, disasters upon them. Youths oppress my people and women rule over them. So, I mean, back in this part of history, that God did not look at that as necessarily the perfect order of the A+ order of how things be. And so to me, that really kind of helps me be able perhaps to answer the question when women come, and if the men in their life have relinquished their leadership, what are they supposed to do? Because a lot of women are like, it's this very confusing problem of, am I going to just kind of go without leadership in my family, or am I going to provide what my children need to not wander off the path of righteousness? And so to me, the fact that God uses Deborah as a leader shows that it's much better to wield the influence that you have for the good of all, as opposed to just letting everything slide, since in the case when a man's not going to take hold of the reins of the leadership of the family.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also Deborah never did it as being about her.
Yeah.
It was always about God.
True.
And
Not
doing,
a power thing. Yeah. It's not like an achievement. It's God's using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And women are doing what they're called to do to protect their children and
Absolutely.
to see to their welfare.
Absolutely.
And to help their husbands see things that sometimes they miss.
Yeah.
But yeah. And some people think that Barak was a coward. And I don't know. I didn't look actually back through like some of the lesson books from when I used to teach, but the young children. And I don't know if he was or not. I know that this was not a thing that was expected for him to request a woman that, well, not just request, demand that a woman accompany him. And it wasn't just any woman. It was a, judge and prophetess, a spokesperson for God.
Yes.
But he had been back in 1 Samuel listed as a mighty warrior or hero of Israel. Mm-hmm. And then, as you've mentioned, is also listed in Hebrews 11 about the faith, the hall of faith. That so whatever this event was, it wasn't the end of the story. Yes. Even though we don't hear specifics after that. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we lose sight. This is a little sidebar. I was listening earlier to the catastrophizing podcast, and they on Owl, and and so sometimes I think we look at these kinds of events as a catastrophe, and they really are just an event. This is a major one, but it didn't determine the rest of his life. It was. True. He was still counted faithful when it mattered.
Absolutely. Yes, he gets credit because that does take courage. Even when God is saying like the battle belongs to you, like you're gonna. It's still an event, and it's but it's not one. Asking a woman to come along to be with you as this happens is not the end of the story. It's a small piece of a very, an obedient thing to God. And I'm glad to see he's in Hebrews 11. And as I said, I learned that from you. I hadn't noticed that.
And the account goes on that after, Jael is killed, it kills Sisera. We should probably talk about that.
Oh yes. Tell me about that.
Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
To
let's meet
Jael. In this battle, they were told exactly what to do, how many men to take, and how to pursue the battle. Part of Barak's hesitation could have been because of the 900 chariots of iron, war chariots that the Canaanites had, and he didn't have any. But again, God took care of those chariots to the point that the one Sisera was riding in was incapacitated, perhaps stuck in mud, and could not continue. So as all of his men are lying dead all over the place, everyone was wiped out. He alone escaped, and he runs away on foot and goes to the home of the Kenite. Jael was the wife.
Yes.
And the husband was Heber, Heber, Heber. He was the Kenite husband of Jael, but he was gone for the day. And so Jael thinks he is in her home, taking care of her home like she should be, I guess. And Sisera gets to the house thinking he's going to the home of an ally, because the Kenites were allies of Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
And when he gets to the thing, to her tent, he
Tent.
said, I need a place to hide out. Will you help me? And so she welcomes him into her home. He asked if he could have some water. She gave him milk, which is a much better beverage for
It's a
a person who has just come in from running from the battle.
yeah.
It has nutrients in it, not just the liquid that he needed. And he was exhausted. So after he drank his milk, she puts him covers him with a rug, he's in bed, and he falls sound asleep. And I thought, as I was reviewing the notes before we met this evening, that it was when he fell asleep without a care in the world. I mean, aside from the fact he just lost a major battle, but he felt safe. He felt like his life was he would wake up and he would live to fight again.
Mm.
And I think about how often we do that. We sometimes put off more things than we ought to,
Yeah. Yes.
And maybe our main thing is to make sure that each night when we go to bed, we make sure that we connect with our Lord and say,
Absolutely.
and I don't mean we should be afraid that we're not going to be saved. It's not that kind of a thing, but it's that we always need to be ready, as though we were going to be not staying around.
Yeah. And your comments are making me wonder, Minerva, that because he just saw his army wiped out. So does he know at this point who is God, where the power was? I mean, what were the chances that he would lose that battle with, as you said, his advanced military technology with these chariots? So does he know who the Lord is? So yeah, you kind of wonder what his last thoughts were.
Yeah. But he went to sleep. And while he's asleep, Jael takes a tent peg and a hammer and pounds it right through his temple.
Yeah.
Into the floor. That's a strong woman. I mean, or God, because obviously God had something to do with it. I know God had to communicate with her somehow to know that
I think so. Yes.
that she was going to kill somebody that day and how it was going to happen. But it's just amazing. And she used the tools that she had at her availability. These were common household items, not something that, she had to have special preparation for, or God said, you need to kill somebody today, go buy you a sword.
Yeah, we don't know. I was noticing though that Judges 5:24 says, most blessed among women is Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, most blessed of tent dwelling women. And this most blessed among women is only used in the scriptures in relation to Mary, the mother of Jesus. So it does look like it's an act of faith.
Yeah.
So, like you're saying, God, there must have been some kind of communication between God, because she's called most blessed of women. And usually if it's just like who you happen to murder that day, that's not usually the kind of credit you get for that.
No. I mean, she was fulfilling God's will.
Yeah.
God said a woman is going to be the one that is like the final nail in the coffin of this battle.
Yeah.
And it was Jael.
Yeah.
But then, to not totally throw Barak under the bus, he did leave after he saw him in there. And he went and eventually killed Jabin, the Canaanite king. So he continued his battle to totally wipe out the oppressors.
Yes. And I loved your, when we were speaking earlier, I loved your observation about both the objectivity, we called it, of Deborah, but also I think we see that same quality in Jael, this objectivity that does help you. I think you put it, she's very matter of fact, right? And so she has this ability to think and the wisdom to go to the Father for help in making the right decision. So yeah. And we talked about how this is a quality that if we, especially right now with all the civil unrest
Yes.
at present, right? If we can try to be more objective of doing the next right thing and not, you can only do that if you're not letting your emotions entirely have the steering wheel of your life, right? Because if you are mainly making your decisions moment by moment on what you're feeling, fear would get in the way. There's all kinds of emotions don't follow your heart. It's like the world is always saying, follow your heart, follow your heart. Follow the directions of God. Follow the next right thing. Follow your trained conscience.
Yes.
And that's, I think, what we're seeing in these two women that were able to really advance the nation of Israel in the work God had assigned them.
Mm-hmm. And in those, that song, God is given the credit first.
Ah, yes.
Also, which is classic for Deborah. And,
Yeah.
Because we should always start our days that way, and when things happen.
Yes.
Even bad things that happen. And I'm not a Pollyanna. I mean, but I know bad things happen, but I think when you have the wisdom of living to an old age,
yes,
you also see that good comes back. I mean, it can be bad at the time, but there's also when the pain of that moment is not so fresh, you can
yes.
start to see what you gained from it that is much greater than the loss that you had.
If you look for it, yes, you can always use your pain. You might as well. It happened, and accepting that whatever these losses are, that it happened, you can use, like, what advantage might I have on this scary ground that's now my new, this is my new life? Is there something I can do? Because, and maybe it's going to be even outreach to people that have been or are going to experience what you've just experienced. But yes, however you use it, we can use every single experience that comes our way toward the advantages of other people around us, the kingdom of God, and etc. So I like the point.
And the whole point of this life is to prepare for the next one.
Yes. Yes.
So if we always seek to honor God first.
Yes. You're reminding me of verse 2 of that Deborah, her song, when the princes take the lead in Israel, when the people volunteer, bless the Lord. So that's exactly what we still need, when the people volunteer. And so, I mean, I just think about, it's been so interesting watching your own life, Minerva, kind of being on the sidelines and seeing, I said a little bit in the intro about watching, one of the biggest losses of your life. And on the heels of that, and really even before that even happened. And so I just feel like you kind of went out to battle at Florida College and like, let's make a college where women can come and be taught in a more holistic way, to take care of these people that they're going to be taking care of as they nurse them, to take care of more of the whole person, because I know just from my losses, I had 2 stillbirths and that kind of thing. The nurses that came around and tended both to my body and to my heart with compassion. And these are spiritual concepts that acknowledge we are more than a body. We are a spirit and a heart, and all of that. And I know that that's a component of, since you approach nursing as like with a more of a, I don't even know if I'm using the word holistic the right way, but as a more, acknowledging the realities of we're more than just bodies. I mean, what an advantage that you just went in, and that was hard work to get that thing accredited. I can't even, it's like mind blowing. But that your work there, because you charged in and did something right on the heels of this big loss. So many women and men are gonna that go to this nursing program. They're just gonna do the ripple effects of it. I love thinking about the ripple effects of it. So it's been kind of fun.
And for me, I mean, yes, it was a lot of work, but I did it for my students, and my students were actually my gift back from, they filled a void in my heart for, and I actually just took a vacation with one of my grads from 2 years ago. So, or from a year ago, because I'm kind of like their grandmother. So
exactly.
But,
priceless.
And I see them in their practice as nurses.
Yes.
Using God, using their faith to help them be able to care for that whole person. And you did use holistic very properly.
Good.
Good. Because when we only look at the physical and we don't look at the spiritual and the, social parts of health,
yes,
we're not going to get those optimum levels.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is that by taking the approach that you do to nursing and helping to establish a program that's going to take into consideration the elements that we're discussing, you're also, the burdens that nurses carry as they lose a patient. I mean, it's talk about an emotional roller coaster. I remember one thing, Minerva, that you said that really impressed me, and Mark, because I think I heard Mark make reference to this recently, was, when there's something at the college that we're discussing, Florida College in Temple Terrace, where, there's a very encouraging event that happens, and a lot of speakers come and say encouraging, spiritually enriching things for about 3 days every year in February. And, Minerva encouraged her students to not skip this thing, even though it's like not going to be talking about what they're going to be tested on, because you said this is the most important part of your education. Like you're going to need what you hear to get through what you're going to be exposed to in this very demanding career. So that's also something that I just think was so wise, of just strengthening your own. The more you're pouring into your own soul and spirit wisdom, the more you're going to have to offer this world. Because a lot of people, when they're in a health crisis, obviously they might start asking some questions, and maybe you can point them in a wise direction. And of course, that was one reason why I wanted you to talk about Deborah. I'm so glad that you took me up on this. Is there some final points that you wanted to make in your notes at all there?
Well,
Minerva, anything else?
Mostly to always, we always have to remember God when we're making our decisions, and strive to live our lives as pleasing to Him and as obedient to Him as we possibly can. So honoring God, and then being open to opportunities that present, and don't go directly to all the reasons why this would maybe be a bad idea.
Yes.
When I was making my decision to come to Florida College, which has been very rewarding in many ways, had I known what I was getting into, I might not have come, because at that point I couldn't do it. But the last thing would be that God will provide. God will not ask you to do something that you're not capable of doing. And you may have to look to find those tools, but they'll be there. If we take a moment to really be resourceful, He's never going to ask us to do something we can't do. And just accept that. Sometimes it's the people around you. Sometimes, it's a certain
Bible study that you attend. Yeah, God is going to, he's given us all things unto life and godliness.
Mhm.
And he gives us the strength to, but through Christ, I can do all things. So
Yes.
beautiful, beautiful presentation. Thank you so much for your hard work on this. I wanted to end our conversation here about the beauty of trusting God, a case study of Deborah, with some verses out of that Song of Deborah in Judges 5:31 that I thought were really beautiful and inspiring. Maybe even a t-shirt, Minerva, I'm not sure here, but verse 21 says, "March on, O my soul, in strength." How do you like that for a mantra? March
I
on.
love it.
You could think about that like every time something hits you. March on, oh my soul, in strength. And then lastly in Judges 5:31, is my prayer, I think I'll say, to God for each of our sisters who have viewed this great conversation. And that is this quote: "May those who love you shine like the sun at its brightest," unquote. So I love that. And I know
I
a lot
love
of
it.
our viewers love God and are very shiny, just like my Minerva. All right. Well, thank you so much again. And thank you, viewers, for watching this Balancing the Christian Life conversation. God bless.